Hi, everyone. For the Edpuzzle this week, we're going to be spending some time covering essentially everything that you need to know to complete assignment 2. And so both this Edpuzzle and that assignment revolve around getting familiar with the library online and learning how to find specific types of psychological research within the library online. Some of you might be more or less familiar with finding research or other types of sources using our library online. If you're already somewhat familiar with it, that's great. If you're very familiar with it from the method sequence, that's even better. But here we're going to be really focusing in on how to find empirical articles, so primary source research within the library. And so even if you've learned how to do this within other fields or for other classes, this is going to be somewhat more specific. And it's going to tie in directly with the other courses that you'll be taking in psychology. So just giving a brief overview of what this Edpuzzle is going to cover. First, I'll go into a little bit more of why we are learning this and what you might use these skills for after this course. I'll give you a brief glimpse of what assignment 2 looks like so that we can kind of frame our mind around that before we go through the instructions on how to identify certain types of research and how to search for that kind of research in the library. Then I'll just briefly show you how to download and save all the research that you found in the library on your computer, because as part of assignment 2, you'll be submitting 3 of the articles that you found. So why is knowing how to find research important? Oftentimes people don't realize that psychology is a science, and so everything that we do or everything that we know in psychology, while some of it may seem intuitive, all of it has been discovered through research. And so to really become an expert in psychology, we have to look at this research firsthand and learn how to read and interpret it on our own. And then further down the road, depending on how far you go with the psychology career, you will be then the one conducting the research. And so if you are taking the method sequence after this course, you will be required to find these types of articles and compile them together to write a literature review, and that's essentially the main focus of Psychology 315, 316, and Psych 498. If you have already done the research methods and you're about to start applying to graduate school, learning some of the finer-tuned adjustments that you can make through these literature searches will really help you before you enter a graduate program. And so this is crucial for a psychology major to know. And this is what assignment 2 looks like this week. Up here, we simply have instructions, and I'm not going to read through it exactly, but the idea is that you're going to go into the library, you're going to find 3 empirical articles, and I'll go over what an empirical article is in just a minute. You're going to find 3 empirical articles, you're going to download and save them to your computer, and then after you've found it, you're going to complete this worksheet, and you're going to attach this completed worksheet in addition to the 3 PDF articles that you downloaded from the library, all as part of your submission for the assignment. And so the assignment is going to end up being 4 submissions into the folder. I'm sorry, 4 files attached to 1 submission in the folder. If you don't do all that exactly right and you spread them out over multiple submissions, it's not a big deal. It's just a little bit harder for me to grade and get through. But I'll show you exactly how to do all of that in this Edpuzzle. So as part of this worksheet, what you'll do is you will, after you find your articles, is you will put the APA-style reference for each of the articles that you found here. And so under this number 1, A, B, and C. And so we learned how to do that last week, so you should be able to go and look at those articles and gather information from the PDF article that you need to generate a reference on your own, or if you know a shortcut, using a reference generator either on the library, which I'll show you, or Google Scholar, that's fine too. Again, you just have to make sure that you proofread those and edit them to the mistakes that those generators constantly make. Then you'll just answer some brief questions down here about how your search went and kind of your thought process as you went through it. So one thing I want to mention is that you don't really need to take notes during this Ed lecture, because all of the information that I present here, content and instruction-wise, is included in supplemental notes within the module. And so afterwards, you can just go into the module and print out all those supplemental notes and they should essentially give you all of the information that we covered here in this Edpuzzle, just without the narration and the explanation by me. And so what we're going to be looking for in the library is what we call peer-reviewed research. And all of our research in psychological science, in social sciences, and in any other science is peer-reviewed. And I say credible research because there is research that exists out there that someone might put on the internet that's not peer-reviewed, and we wouldn't consider that to be credible. Peer-reviewed essentially means that once a study has been done, it is very skeptically reviewed by a panel of experts in that field to make sure that those researchers did everything just exactly right. And it's uncommon for anything to be done just exactly right the first time. So oftentimes studies get rejected or authors are required to redo them to fix errors. We call that a revise and resubmit. But everything that you're going to find in the library has been peer-reviewed, which means it's really been stringently evaluated by experts over and over and over again before it was allowed to be published. And so we should be able to, through this process, have a pretty good faith in the research and the findings that we're reading, that they're not subjective and not biased and things of that nature. So all of the types of research we're going to be finding in the library are peer-reviewed. And specifically, there's two basic types of research that you're going to be finding and that might be of interest to you as we start searching the library. The first one are articles from academic journals, which is the primary method of disseminating empirical articles, which I'll show you in a second, to the scientific community. Those are studies that people have done, and now they're now writing an article about that study and publishing the results. You'll also find edited books or chapters from edited books. These sometimes can be similar to academic journals, but very rarely do we see actual studies in these books. Rather, they're just writing about studies that have been done in the past, or summarizing information or drawing theory or things of that nature. But both of these are going to be really helpful to you as you're searching the library and using sources to write papers about psychological research. What we're going to be most focused on are these articles from academic journals. And there's two basic types of articles from academic journals. And for this assignment, we're going to be focusing on just this first one, which is an empirical article. So an empirical article is a report of a study that the authors conducted. So it's a primary source, meaning the people that are writing that article are the ones that conducted the study. So it's coming straight from the horse's mouth. And so these are people who created the study, they ran the study, they did the analysis, and now they are drawing findings and conclusions from that study and then publishing it themselves. So it's a primary source article, and this is what we're most interested in. Review articles are people that have read other people's studies, and they are now writing about the studies that other people have done. And while these are interesting and they are informative, because you essentially sometimes can get away with reading one review study that looks at 10 empirical studies, for this course, while we learn to paraphrase and summarize some of this research, it's going to be really important that we focus on empirical studies, because you don't want to try to, in the next assignment 3, summarize a summary of someone else's summary. That starts to get very convoluted and confusing. And so being able to distinguish an empirical article from a review article is going to be important. And luckily, the library makes that easy because it just has kind of an item line on the index that tells you what type of article it is. Now, when you search for something in the library, there's going to be other stuff that pops up too. And that's going to be, those are things that you need to kind of filter through and disregard as you're doing this search. And probably for any other course that you're doing as well, these are not going to be very helpful to you, and I'll tell you why. You might come across editorials or book reviews. And so these are opinion-based pieces, more similar to blogs, and sometimes they'll pop up depending on what you search for, but they're heavily biased often, and they're not really giving you a good non-partial look at any of the research. You also don't know how much expertise these people have, and so they might be giving you a misrepresentation of whatever they're talking about. You'll also find dissertations when you do literature searches, and dissertations are great. They have a lot of information on them. They are written by people that are doing their PhD. It's essentially their final project. And so the information in dissertations is often credible. But the issue with dissertations are that dissertations are 100+ pages long for the most part, and they're very hard to obtain through the library. So you really wouldn't want to use a dissertation for anything that you're doing in school unless you want to read 150 pages to get a little bit of information out of it. So those are just kind of heavy workload sources that you want to avoid. They also take a very long time to get. And so again, we're just going to be really focusing here on these empirical articles, these primary source studies that the authors have run and then are now publishing the results of. So now let's go ahead and go to the library website, and I'll just show you how to navigate through the website. So here's one of the supplemental notes that you'll find that is covering everything that I'm just went over. But now let's go over to the library. So this is the library page. You can type in the URL, or often I'm just lazy and Google Mercer Library. So what you want to avoid is coming in here to the search bar and typing something, okay? Unless you're looking for a very specific thing that you can put in quotes, as you see here, like the title of a book that you're looking for specifically, you can use that for this. But what you don't want to do is type in search words to this general discovery bar. What that's going to do is it's going to pull up all different types of sources from all different types of areas, history, law, and everything else that exists in the Mercer Library. And you're going to get such a broad search, it's going to be really unhelpful to you. So what we have to do is we have to go deeper into the library, into one of the large psychological databases, and do our search strictly within that database. So what we're going to do now is click on database. I'm going to click on P for psychology. And then the database I'm looking for is PsycInfo. That's one of the largest psychology databases that are available. And so here we see PsycInfo. So once you go to P, it's at the very bottom of the list. You could try to play around with some of these other ones. PsycArticle is also a good one. But these other ones are just smaller, and they're not going to have quite as many sources and resources in them as PsycInfo, which is the most comprehensive. So we're going to click on PsycInfo. And so now I'm in the database. And so anything that I type in the search bar is only going to be searching within this PsycInfo database. And so it'll be really obvious whether you're just searching within PsycInfo or whether you're doing the broader search, because you'll end up submitting and finding a lot of non-psychology based articles if you're not searching within PsycInfo. So let's just type in. So one thing that you'll have to have in mind as you're doing this assignment is a general topic that you might want to read a little bit more about at the beginning of this class. So I, of course, would recommend you thinking of a topic that's relevant to something that you might want to do after school. So I'm just going to, let's say I don't really have a good idea, but I really liked my developmental psychology course. So I'm just going to type in developmental psychology, and some kind of suggestions show up here. I'm just going to stick with developmental psychology. So that's a very broad search. Actually recommend doing something a little bit more specific. If there was something within developmental psychology you were more interested in, like gender differences in autism or something of that nature, go ahead and do the search here. But I'm just going to put in something really broad so that we can start to get a feel for the different types of sources that you're seeing here. So here are all the titles of the different sources. You'll see that I came up with this broad search with over 100,000 sources here. And so again, a more narrow search would be better, but sometimes I can just kind of get an idea and brainstorm by doing a broader search if I don't really have an idea of something that I might be interested in. So the first thing to look at is, these are obviously all the titles here. Next to the titles, it gives you an icon that's an indication of the type of source that it is. So here we see this is a book. So since this assignment is looking only for empirical articles, that's not what we're looking for. Also, this book might not be available online, and it's going to be hard for me to access online. We might have to go into the library and actually rent it out of the library. So we're going to disregard that. These other ones that you see here are indicated as academic journals, and so those are the ones that we're going to be interested in. Remember that there's two basic kinds of articles in an academic journal. There's an empirical article, which debuts a primary source study, and that's what we're interested in, but they're also going to have review articles, which summarize other people's studies in a review. Those are the ones that we don't want to mess with for this course because they're going to be really hard to summarize in assignment 3. So I'm looking for one that I think is going to be a empirical article. So let's say I'm interested in these how children value objects. I'm going to click on this. Once I click on the title, it takes me to the index page and it gives me all sorts of information about this article. So this is where you could go when you're generating your reference for the assignment 2. All of this is the information that you need to make the reference. You see we have the author's names here, the journal name, the year, everything that you might need. The abstract, so you can find a little bit more about the article and what they're actually doing. Down here, you'll find some more information, and here's where this is going to be a really good cue, is if you look under methodology, it'll tell you what type of article it is. And so you see here, this one's indicated as being an empirical study. So that's exactly what you want. This one is documenting a study that someone conducted and is now reporting the results of. And so this is a good empirical study. So I could use this for assignment 2. And so now what I want to do, assuming I like this summary, and this article seems to interest me, you know, at least enough, is we want to get access to this article, the entire article. And so there's 3 ways that we can get access to the article. Depending on the source, the library will have different access to it. So we see for this one over here, we'll give you the access options. The easiest one, if you get lucky, is going to be a PDF full text. And so if that's linked here, then you can just click on it and it'll automatically give you the PDF for the article, which you can then download and save on your computer and then attach as part of the assignment. Let's go back and find one that's not a PDF full text. So let's go to, you'll also see the access options here on the main page as well. Let's say I wanted this article. You'll see that there is not a PDF full text button by this article. Rather, it says find full text. And so that's a second option that the article gives you. And essentially, it just makes you jump through an extra hoop or 2 to get to the PDF version of the article. So let's say I wanted to use this as my second article on assignment 2. I'm going to click find full text. And what it does is it takes me to a couple links that might be able to take me to that article. And so here I'm going to click this first one, view this article at Science Direct. And now it takes me right to the article, and I can now download the PDF, save it on my computer, and attach it as part of the submission for the assignment. So that's the second way that these articles will be available. Here is a third one. So let's say this was a academic article that we wanted to use, so pretending it's not a book. Request this through interlibrary loan. What that means is that the library has to go and get the article. And so you're going to request that source through the library, you're going to fill out a short form, and then the library is going to email you the source then. The issue with that is that it takes a couple days. And so if you need the article or the PDF right away to complete your assignment and submit it, that's not going to be, this third option, request through ILL, is not going to be what you want to do because it's going to take a couple days to a week for you to get the article. So you want to avoid that, but the find full text, the HTML full text is very similar to the PDF full text. Those are all good options. Let's click on another one just to take a look and see if we can find one that is not indicated as being an empirical study. So here you see that there is no indication of what the methodology is. And so it's hard to see what this might be. So you can get an idea from looking at the abstract. If the abstract is not describing a specific study and what their participants were and what their participants were doing, then it's not really going to be an empirical article, most likely. If you read through the abstract and it's just kind of talking about theory or it's summarizing things that we know. That's going to be a review article, and that's not going to be easy to use for this assignment or the next assignment. So once you've found 3 articles, you want to download all of them to your computer and then attach them to the submission for the assignment 2, along with the worksheet that you completed. Now, if you end up with a search that's overwhelming and you have all of these modifiers over here, you can use these to help narrow down your search. And so a good way to narrow it down is you can limit it to only linked full text, which are going to be only the ones with PDFs and HTML access, so immediate access to it. It might be a good one. You can also limit it by the year here. Usually you don't really want any research that's more than, let's say, 20 years old. You can limit it to academic journals here so that you don't have to sift through books and other types of sources. And you can also limit the methodology down here so that you're only looking at empirical studies, and that way you don't get tricked into attaching a review study. So you see here, just by using these quick modifiers, I've limited it only to articles that I can have immediate access to and articles that are empirical and in academic journals. So you know how to search the library now. Remember, we have to go into our specific PsycInfo database, and then we need to limit our search using those modifiers that I just showed you to make sure that we're finding the correct type of articles for this in the next assignment. After you've done all that and put the references here before attaching the worksheet, you should just kind of answer these open-ended questions about how your search went. And that's all you're going to need to do for assignment 2. So depending on how familiar you are with the library, it really shouldn't take you very long if you follow these instructions as I've laid them out here.